something that's in your veins, and I doubt that ever change. Ambition is my shit, and I put that on my name, and I doubt that ever change. For my ambition.
Okay. And, we had a great song suggested to us from Ken Moran. So why the song Ambition, which kind of is appropriate?
It's kind of self-explanatory from the word, but I mean, yeah, it's one of those songs that's just been I've been hearing throughout my whole life pretty much, and it's kind of just been a driving force for me, really, just telling me to keep going at it. Because I mean, only I can really make my dreams possible, you know. So
Only I can make my dreams possible. And here we are at Icy Stars doing exactly that. And the word ambition also is really appropriate for all of your presentations that you're going to be making in a minute. Mind where we are. We've looked at this concept called civic engagement and really tried to peel the onion, so to speak. And we talked about 3 aspects of civic engagement. You know, in order to get to Z, you got to start at A, I guess. And we started with this concept of the civic heart. What kind of person ought you be? What kind of appetite or your character, I guess, no other way to put it, before we even start this journey? What's in your heart? And I think we're going to see an answer to that very shortly as you unpack your presentations for your colleagues. I think we're going to see a lot of civic heart here. But then we said, well, great. Once we're off on this journey with the proper civic heart and the robust civic heart, what should be in the brain? What should we know? What sort of facts? What sort of context? And we discussed that. And then finally, after the first 2, then and only then would you talk about, well, what should we be doing with all that? What kinds of activities and accomplishments should you be able to boast about or put on your civic resume, as it were? And we discussed quite a bit of that, and you revealed what you have done in the world of civics up to now by revealing the results of our poll, which is, again, on the class website if you want to remind yourself. And I invited you to review that list and to see if there was anything on the list which you have not done, which you would like to do, or something that you would like to do more of. Okay, which brings us to today. You were given something called the Putting Out the Fire assignment, which has to do with the thing in your personal life, in your civic life, that makes you mad. Something about society that you find unjust, intolerable. You question it. It makes you mad. It gets you up out of your seat. And we asked you to share with that. And I want to just say in advance, thank you. Thank you for sharing because it's a little uncomfortable. It's not normal, really, to discuss these matters in a business setting. And that's why this is such an unusual and special environment that you're in with Icy Stars, which is addressing your whole self, you know, in terms of your development and your skills and your aspirations. So it's a beautiful and rare thing. And I just wanted to, again, if you haven't been thanked, I'm thanking you now for sharing what you're going to share in a few minutes. And again, for some people, it'll be an easy thing, something that you want to talk about. And for others, this is a little new to share these sorts of things with your colleagues, your civic, with your business and Icy Stars colleagues, friends, and staff. Okay. To remind us, the assignment required you to create a slideshow, a PowerPoint presentation, which explained to us what it is that makes you mad. What is this burning issue? Could you please explain it for us? Images are great. and to find data. So you'll be interested to see what your colleagues have found on the internet, searching various websites to display these graphs, these charts, and you'll have to judge which ones are super clear, which ones are compelling, which ones are confusing. This is all good learning because the graphic display of data is a technical thing that actually is a job. It's a career path in and of itself. All right, we asked you to find a few of those to help us understand the scope and import of your issue. Then we asked you to do a little research on groups that were actually working in that field. One being in Kansas City, one that deals with this issue more at the policy level, and a third organization that was really aggressively fighting wherever they might be. And for you to share us a little bit about those organizations. But the main thing was your solutions. What should we do about this burning issue? Okay, that's the deal on the table. All right, now I'm going to share the screen with the class website. So that's where all your presentations are parked. And what I'm going to do is just go in the order of which I received them. So we'll just start at the top and work our way down to the bottom. I will advance the slides for you. So when you're ready to say to see the next slide, just say next slide, and I'll take care of that for you. And I have a timer going at 7 minutes. So we're going to try not to cut anyone off. I know this will be a very passionate exchange, and I know you have a lot to say, but I'm going to try to sort of give you like the time signal or something, so we can move on and have enough time for us to discuss amongst ourselves how this landed for you. All right. Okay. That being said, let's take a look at the class website. Go. And there we go. Okay, everyone sees the class website? Good. All right, first up is Greg.
Oh, all right. I was first.
Yes, yes, sir.
All right. Well, good morning, everyone. I appreciate everybody for being here, and I'm here to present a topic that's both important and relevant in our society today. Go ahead to the next slide. And that topic is racial disparity in the United States justice system. And this is a critical issue that affects our community. In the next few minutes, we will go deeper into data and the implications of racial disparities within our justice system. And we will explore how these disparities are urgent, their extent, and most importantly, what we can do to address and rectify the issue. And hopefully by the end of this presentation, we'll have a deeper understanding of the issue and feel empowered to contribute to the solutions. Let's take a look at this pie chart. It represents the racial composition of the general population and the incarcerated population rate in the United States. And as you can see, that with white individuals, they make up approximately 60% of the population, but they account for only 31% of the incarcerated population. In contrast, Black individuals make up less than 14% of the population and account for a staggering 32% of the incarcerated population. And you have the other category who represent a 30% of the population and 26% of the incarcerated population. This clearly indicates This clearly indicates the disparity that exists in our racial justice system. Blah blah. I'm sorry. Within our justice system. Next slide. Now let's examine sentence lengths and probation likelihoods. This slide presents two graphs that highlight the differences in the judicial outcomes based on race. The first graph shows that Black males receive sentences that are, on average, 13.4% longer than those of white males. Hispanic males receive sentences 11.2% longer, and males of other races receive sentences 3.7% longer. And in the second graph, we see probation likelihoods. And that illustrates that Black males are 23.4% less likely to receive probation compared to white males, and Hispanic males are 26.6% less likely, and males of other races are 8.1% less likely. These stats are a stark reminder of the inequality that exists within our sentencing and probation systems, often resulting in harsher penalties for people of color. Next slide. And this slide also presents another sobering statistic about the likelihood of imprisonment for a male born in the year 2000. It illustrates the racial disparity in incarceration rates. These figures highlight the disproportionate impact of the justice system on men of color and underscore the need for urgent reform. As you can see, I'll go through it. All men, 1 in 10 for all men, 1 in 20 likelihood of imprisonment for a white male born in 2000. And there's a 1 in 5 chance for a Black male born in 2000. And there's a 1 in 8 chance for a Latino man born in the year 2000. Next slide, please. This graph that's titled Historic and Projected U.S. Prison Population provides a visual representation of the changes in the U.S. prison population over time. So in 1980, there were approximately 250,000 inmates in U.S. prison system. That number spiked to 1.6 million by 2019, reflecting a significant increase for 4 straight decades. Currently, the prison population has regressed slightly down to like 1.1 million. However, this projection is alarming, and it suggests that it would take to 2098 to return to the inmate levels of 1980. That's 75 years to correct a problem that's been going on for 50. This projection underscores the long-term effects of the criminal justice policies and the urgent need for reform. Next slide. All right, this slide shows some organizations that are active in this particular arena. The CJC is local to Kansas City, and they work to evaluate specific policy reforms that can put us on the road to end the mass incarceration. The Sentencing Project is a national organization that advocates for effective and humane responses to crime that minimize imprisonment and criminalization of youth and adults. And a team and a organization that's actively doing things to help is Team Rock. That's founded by Jay-Z. That's Rock Nation's philanthropic and social justice division, committed to activism and humanitarianism. Next slide. That slide is solutions. So in our final slide, I propose these actionable solutions that can help combat racial disparities in the U.S. justice system. Bias training. So you can implement comprehensive training for law enforcement officers, for prosecutors, judges, public defenders, to recognize and mitigate their unconscious biases. Diverse representation, ensuring that diverse representation at all levels of the justice system to reflect the communities they serve. Sentence reform, reforming sentence guidelines and eliminate mandatory minimums, and to provide fairer and more appropriate sentences. And community policing to strengthen community efforts and build trust and cooperation between law enforcement and the communities they serve. So each of these solutions play a crucial role in moving towards a just system that is fair and equitable for all. Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you so much for going first, Greg. Really. Yay. A tip of my hat. Many things to reflect on. I'll just say one thing. The state of Illinois, after multiple years of policy work, eliminated cash bail. We are the first state to do that. And this has huge implications for on the ground, everyday folk who run afoul of the law, especially for people of color who get into these things where, like, maybe they fell behind in a car loan or some such thing, and then their license gets outdated, and so you run afoul of the law for small trivial matters, but still they have big impact. And then that person goes into this court system and has to stay there because they don't have $500 or whatever it is for the bail. And so you find in the state of Illinois and many of the states, people languishing in the local jailhouse, the county jailhouse, sometimes for years, as they move through some adjudication. It could be a completely phony beef, but it screws up your life, obviously. And so in Illinois, at least, while we deal with all these other aspects, of the things that you mentioned in the criminal justice system, at least that one is not going to mess you up. You're not going to stay in prison because you don't have the cash. Now, if you do a violent thing, that's the judge can still have the discretion as he would or she would for any case. But at least for most situations where you might be in the jailhouse because you don't have $1,000 or $500, whatever it is, that is not the case anymore in Illinois. So we think that's a good thing. Awesome. Thank you so much. That was really well done. All right, Roger. You're up next, so you can start us off if you would. And then we'll share the screen for you.
All right. Hello, everyone. I would like to present my burning issue. You can go ahead and pull up the slide.
Right.
And I appreciate you all for allowing me to present as well.
Take this down,
all right. I'm Roger Warren II, and I represent Cycle 2. Next slide. My burning issue is homelessness in the Kansas City metropolitan area. Next slide. So this is kind of like some of the statistics. So the Kansas City metropolitan area has 2.3 million in population. The population in Kansas City is 509,000. And then Kansas City, Missouri is ranked 33rd in homelessness. And this is based on research in 2018. There's more than 2,200 homeless that's homeless every night, and 1,200 in youth within that district without homes. Next slide. So right here we have I have a picture of Kansas. Well, it has Kansas City in because it's Kansas City Independence Summit Jackson, and they kind of group all that together because that's kind of the same area. So this one shows that there's about almost 1,800 people homeless on a given night, and that's 17.4 homeless per 10,000 people in the general population. And then I have another graph that's it says households experiencing problems in housing. So and this goes by this goes by different races. So we have our white counterparts that are at 26.7%. We have our Black folks at 46%. Hispanic is at 42.2. And then this is just a graph, just or a table, just referring to the housing issues and what different races deal with within that. You can go ahead and go to the next slide. All right, so this is the extent of my issue. So these are some of the things and the reasons why and what's causing what impact this homelessness having. So they say the reason why homelessness is going on pretty much at this point is higher cost of living, scarce mental health resources, and the economic impact of COVID pandemic. It says it's about 1,800 homeless persons in the Kansas City metropolitan area, including Jackson County, which is 23.6 of them younger. We have 40.7 in females, 58% in males. We have 48% in whites and 50% in blacks. And then, it looks like I actually put one of those twice. So I would say another thing is we have a lot of homeless camps that are posted around the city, which is causing a lot of debris and trash as well. So we can go to the next slide. And this is just a small list of some of the shelters that help the homeless at night. So we have the City Union Mission building, and that's in the back. That's the building in the background. We have the City Mission, the KCVA, emergency housing for veterans, Restart, emergency and shelter and transitional home, Salvation Army, Shelter Kansas City Rescue Mission, and Hope Faith Ministries. You can go to the next slide. So these are going to be some of the effects if homelessness doesn't end. So it's going to have an effect on the health and safety concerns. So I would say that it would just no one's going to be getting proper health care. No, and then it could be epidemic that can spread. Measles or something else. Something could be created. So that's a concern. It says strain on resources. So it's going to be there's going to be any resources to help people figure out how they can get out of these situations. What's going to be the next step? Who needs what help? What kind of psychiatric help do we need to get to? And next would be social disruption. So it'll be a strain on people communicating with each other, people collaborating on projects, maybe building homes, building shops, growing vegetables, crops, and all those things. And humanitarian crisis would be with crime. Crime is going to go up, of course, with no one having homes, no one really have a sense of being. So murdering and crime will be going on. So we can go to the next slide. So these are 3 different organizations that's doing something to combat homelessness. So in Kansas City, we have the Greater Kansas City Coalition of Ending Homelessness, and we have I have 2 URLs. The first website would be the website to go actually to their website, and this other one is an actual annual report on the statistics. So this is going to expand more information on what's going on and what's the reasoning and things they project to be able to end homelessness. So We have our other organization that's it's called National Alliance to End Homelessness, and that would be just something within the city or within just national and United States. And then I have their web as well. And then we have the Salvation Army, which everyone knows the Salvation Army. It's a pretty national organization that helps out everywhere. And they're very good. I've heard of them, and I know for sure they are a very good organization. All right, we can go to the next slide. And these are my personal issue or my personal solutions. And then I have some happiness in the background, as you can see. And I don't know if you guys see, so I waited to the end to show our guy Brandon right here. He's cheering for the Chiefs right there. So we're happy. All right, so this one of my first things that I put on here is proper diagnosis. I feel that everyone we need proper diagnosis of what's going on. So that would be very important, because if we properly diagnose what's going on, that means we can attack each situation on an individual basis instead of on a group basis. And I say proper mental health is definitely what's going on. How can we fix this? How can we help people make better decisions? And those better decisions come into making being able to end homelessness. I say proper financial education. That's one thing I can say within certain communities is there's not proper education. There's no one knowing, okay, how to balance a bank account or paying your bills on time or managing credit as well. And I say also proper dietary practices. We need to make sure everyone's eating healthy. I know eating fast food is easy for people, and it's convenient. But are we getting more home cooked meals? Are we creating gardens, and are we growing our own food, which is very important? And I say proper job placements. Are we putting these people in proper jobs for them to be able to succeed? Um, yeah, proper having proper job placements. Are we putting people in jobs that they're going to be able to be successful? I'd say also trade internships. That's one thing I know that's important that I don't think that people really pay attention to is we have HVACs, we have plumbers, we have construction, carpentry, we have uh, um, the fire alarms and all that. We have these different trades that need people that want to thrive inside of them. I say tech internship, something what we're doing now is something that's definitely something that's going to be thriving. So are we putting people into these tech industries and tech internships for them to be able to thrive in? Okay. My next thing is proper scholastic education. Are we giving education to the kids for them to be able to be successful? Oh, okay. All right. So that looks like I am ending mine now. Next slide. So reflection is pretty much what I said on the slide before. We're just going to work together as a team to help with this, and just attack it right at the end.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. Again, very thorough. Learning as I'm learning and as I'm listening. Kansas City's got some great resources. Wonderful. Okay. Let's take a look at our next presentation. It will be Braxton. Okay. You're up.
Okay, perfect.
All righty. I will share the screen and you can take us away.
Okay. First, I would like to thank you all for being here and listening into my presentation about African American women birth mortality. And as you can see in the background, that the Black Maternal Health Week is in April between the dates of the 11th and the 17th. This is a week that the country will admire black mothers and black babies as well. To talk about the social injustice rates of the CDC yearly, and yeah. Next slide, please. Okay, my did you know? As you can see, the graph is per 100,000. This is a national rate that the CDC reports every year. This is 2020. And if you notice that the multiple factors, half of those are not health conditions. Because there's such it's structural racism and implicit bias that a lot of healthcare employees have against African American women. And the rates right there, as you can see, are upon each year. So the gray to the far right, well, from what I can see, it's gray. I'm colorblind a little bit. It's 2021, and then the next one before that is 2020. Then you got 2019 and 2018, and that 2019 is only that low because, like we remember, COVID had started, and a lot of mothers did not want to have babies in hospitals, dealing with a lot of complications that COVID may have with their birth. Next slide, please. This is the Missouri data, as well. As you can see, that it is 71%, 71. Okay, 71 deaths per 100,000, which is a very high rate. So I noticed with a lot of my friends that are from the Kansas City area, they do not want to have babies anymore because of these numbers and because of how hospitals treat them. Even with regular checkups, a lot of black women are treated as second class, pretty much, if you will. Next slide, please. These are the things that the issues not addressed. There's going to be an incline in mental health, not dealing with just the families, but communities as well. And those mental healths can actually lead to a physical health condition decline in the community and families. The public health records will not reach their yearly goals. Yeah, the public health has goals that they need to meet, and sometimes actually data is lied. So I've noticed in blog posts that I've seen with researching my topic, a lot of women have talked and voiced their opinion as to knowing that a lot of data has been compromised and not entered in correctly. The healthcare system will no longer have trust. A lot of people will no longer have trust in the healthcare system in itself because, like I said, data has been lied. Doctors lie as to why they're not treating people. Nurses don't treat most women. Next slide, please. Okay, this is the first one dealing. This is the first group that I've researched dealing with the policy. This is the Black Mamas Matter Alliance. This is a maternal health focused. This is a maternal health focused organization. They envision a world where Black mamas have the rights, respects, and resources to thrive before, during, and after the pregnancy. Their goals are changing policies, cultivating the research, and advancing care for Black mamas, and trying to shift the culture. Next slide. This is the National Birth Equity Collaborative. They were founded in 2015. The NBEC focuses on birth combating and increasing rates of birth collaborative that combats the increasing rates of infant mortality and maternal mortality of Black and brown women. At the bottom of this slide, you can see that there's a link to that group. That group actually does not have a website, so there is that is a link to their grant to be granted a website, be granted the money for a website in a community so that they can have a building to where they can I guess support the people of the community within the Baltimore area. That's where they started at. Next slide, please. This is a Kansas City based group. This is the Black Healthcare Coalition. I know some of you probably heard of it. The Black Healthcare Coalition is a community based organization dedicated to addressing health disparities and improving health outcomes for African American women in the Kansas City area. They offer different programs such as maternal health, child health care, prenatal health care. They also offer a program for Black fathers, I believe. So there's people can actually come in, have talks, just conversation, because that helps as well. Next slide. And these are my solutions to making the change, addressing the systematic social and healthcare related factors. I mean, if you're not gonna, it needs to be talked about for one to actually make the change. Cultural trainings, so you can train healthcare employees to on different types of cultures to notice their background and have familiarities with certain things that people are into. And the community supporting your community is a big deal. You get if the rates are so high and you're not supporting the community, what's the point? There's supportive policies that are in the workplace. Like I said, for the Black Mamas Matter, they have at least, it said 4 different policies being brought up to Congress at this point that Congress is not looking over. There's been many in the past. With a blog post that I saw, one of the board members of the Black Mamas Matter group, she said that there had been 7 policies brought up in 2020 that have still not been addressed. They had a letter written to them from one of the lawmakers stating that they were not going to be looked at because they seemed irrelevant, and that makes no sense to me. Data collections and records. If you're not going to look at the past, then how are you going to look at the future? Just keep going. Yeah. Next slide. Oh, and this is my thank you.
Thank you. Awesome. I'm beginning to see a few themes. So I'll just ask you to make some notes perhaps as we move along. If you're seeing things that come up over and over again, we will try to return to them when we get to the discussion part. Thank you so much. All right, let's see what we got now. We are moving on to Demonte. Yeah, here we go. Demonte. All right, here we go. Sharing the screen. You can start, and we'll get you going here.
All right. Good morning, everyone, and thank you for coming. Not like you had much of a choice. When it gets up there, my burning issue, I know it's not up there yet, but my burning issue was poverty in the state of Kansas. It's a big problem in America, but that's a little too broad, and I don't think that I can change the whole world, but I can do my part to give back. So I specifically did my study on the state of Kansas. I'm not going to read through this whole slide because I kind of just went into it. But next slide, please. Also, I do want to let y'all know, I know it says 10 slides down there. I actually only did 7. So as you can see, I don't know how well y'all can see the charts, but as you can see from these charts, the more colorful chart includes data that was gathered by the U.S. Census Bureau for the poverty rate in the state of Kansas by what I believe was different ethnic groups. Um, white white males were over 20% of the poverty rate. Black males were, I believe it was 15%. Um, in the state of Kansas, there are about 70,000 people that are living in poverty, which is about 17% of the total people of the total population of the state. But that could grow. In January, the United Way of Greater Kansas City reported that over 200,000 people were living in poverty. That was 2020. That was a study done in 2023. The city with the highest percentage of people in Kansas, which is, I believe it was pronounced Chitopa. That's how I pronounce it. I don't know if that's the correct pronunciation. But theirs was 28. The next closest one was Wyandotte, which what I believe was like 26 or 27. Those are some of the two highest cities in the state of Kansas with residents living in poverty. Next slide. In this slide, what I covered was a lot of the other cities that were mainly affected. Some of the other higher cities, which I know it looks like it says Kansas City twice on there. The second one, actually, it says Arkansas, but I think I cut it off a little bit on accident. It says Arkansas City, not Kansas City. So what we had was Kansas City, Great Bend, Arkansas City, Fort Scott, Hayes, and I'll let y'all kind of read the rest down that list. But as you can see on the right side, 28% of the city lives in poverty. Great Bend was 20%. Again, I didn't put it on this list, but Chitopa being the most affected in the state of Kansas. I do believe that may be because they don't have a very high population, but it's still a big problem. Poverty in the state of Kansas, as you can see, spreads across multiple cities, which is a problem that I believe needs to be dealt with. It spreads across a lot of cities and it affects a lot of Kansas. Next slide. What I went over in this slide was the effect of poverty on Kansas over time. From this chart goes from 2000 to what I believe is 2022. I couldn't find one that was a little at least 2023. But from what we can see in this chart, it does bounce up and down a little bit. One of our highest points that were in what I think it says 2014 or 2015, where it was 14%. Over time, it did seem to decrease slightly, but is now starting to go back up towards that 14%, still being at 12% in 2022. Over time, I think this problem definitely could get worse if not dealt with. If we have no one trying to combat this problem, I think a lot for this problem is the recent increase in inflation and prices on everything, rent, food, and everything that you need to live, basically. Next slide. So on this slide, these are three groups that I found that are helping to combat poverty in Kansas. The first group, Catholic Charities, which I also did leave the links to all three of these groups. Catholic Charities of Northeast Kansas is a nonprofit organization group that provides relief to families that are living in poverty. They have food pantries, and they also have a summer food program for kids. I didn't put this next part in the slide. I don't know how many schools do this, but I do know that there are multiple school districts across Kansas that give food to kids to take home. It's usually a little bag of food that usually has like canned foods, couple snacks, and things like that. I don't know how many schools exactly do that. They did that back when I was in school. They still do it today. Our next group is Center on Budget and Policy Group. they fight to make sure all policies and standards are being met within other nonprofit organizations, groups that fight to decrease the poverty rate. So basically, they make sure that the groups like Catholic Charities, who say they are here to help, are actually helping, making sure that they stay in line and that they're not just doing something trying to put money into their own pockets. And then our third group, St. Mary's, is actually a organization. They do own a food kitchen in Wyandotte County. I actually have been to their food kitchen when I was younger. They do serve breakfast, lunch, and dinner. There was times where I needed a meal. Others in my family needed a meal, and so we actually went there. That is actually one that did help us out personally when I was younger. So they're a group that gives back to the community as well, specifically a community that I was a part of. But it's St. Mary's Food Kitchen. It's located in Wyandotte County, Kansas City, Kansas. Next slide. So my solution to this problem and how I think that it could be solved. One, I think that Kansas needs to increase their minimum wage. Minimum wage in Kansas right now is still $7.25. I think that increasing minimum wage with the amount of inflation that we have today, I think there's a little bit of room to increase minimum wage, and I think that if they did that, a lot of people would be able to afford a lot of things that may be a little out of their budget right now. I think a lot of people would have more money to, go grocery shopping, get bills paid, and things of that nature. Along with that, if in some way we could decrease inflation, I don't think we'll ever be able to actually stop it, but if we could maybe get it under control and decrease it and manage it better, I think that would also help decrease the poverty rate. I think that would also be a great help towards this problem. This is the end of my slide. Yeah, it says 10, but I didn't actually do 10. I only did 7. But thank you for listening.
Thank you. Again, some powerful themes coming up here. I'll just mention one that occurs to me, and that is local solutions versus national solutions. So we'll put that on the board and return to that. Local solutions versus national solutions. All right. Let's see. Queuing up next at bat, Maya. So you have the floor. And we'll start to share in 1 second.
I didn't know that me and Roger had the same burning issue.
That often happens.
So we kind of have some of the same statistics.
Okay.
Cycle 2. That's me. So my burning issue, homelessness in my city. And then I'll just read this because I kind of put it on a contrasting background. But it says, in our bustling city where skyscrapers touch the sky and dreams are woven into the fabric of every street, there exists a quieter struggle, one that often goes unnoticed. It's the battle for survival faced by those without a place to call home. But within this challenge lies an opportunity for compassion, resilience, and transformation. My pursuit to help the homeless began with a simple realization: we are all interconnected. Their plight is our collective responsibility. Every day in my neighborhood and beyond, I see the faces of the displaced, and my heart truly wrenches for them. Understanding that any one of us can be in that place at any given time helps me keep things in perspective. Next slide. I really like the picture of this guy with the sign that says seeking human kindness, because really sometimes really that's all we need to do is just be kind to people. The graph that I have shows the increase in people experiencing homelessness by the year, and tragically it just keeps getting worse and worse. I think with Of course, COVID made it bad. And then I think just like with the job market and everything and then just like some people just, I guess, have gotten to the rut of being homeless. So that's a startling statistic as well. Next slide, Tom. Three groups working on this issue. The Greater Kansas City Coalition to End Homelessness. They're the lead agency under the Housing and Urban Development Continuum of Care. Their mission is to end homelessness in Kansas City by connecting donors, volunteers, and organizations already working towards a solution. They focus on coordinating efforts, advocating for change, and providing resources to support those facing homelessness. The National Alliance to End Homelessness, they actually do the policies for homelessness. They analyze enacted and proposed legislation and advocate for improved federal policy. I did a little bit of research on them, and they actually do a lot of work to help write policies for that. But one thing I noticed when I was doing the research, and I don't know why I didn't put it in my slide, but and I was talking to somebody else about this, but the criminalization of homelessness, where they're actually making it like illegal to be homeless. Like, and I don't see the point in that. But then also it's like they're putting up, you know how like they put like the splits between the bus stops, like the benches and the bus stop things, and like so they can't lay down, you know what I mean? Like I don't find that very very helpful at all. But then a very good place for that helps a lot of homeless here in Kansas City, as well as the City Union Mission. They help and assist a lot of people in the homeless area. Next slide. Oh, my solution to the issue is volunteering in shelter, to advocate for the homeless, donate items, and support mental health. I think mental health has a lot to do with the homeless population as well. I don't think it's being addressed enough. And then my little picture with homelessness is solvable. I think it can be a solvable solution. A little bit of more research that I did do on it was I was just looking at some other countries with like the worst and the best homelessness situations. And I read that Finland they have like zero homelessness. Like they have I think it's like something to do, I forget what they call it, but they actually, if you're struggling with housing, they actually get you into an apartment, get you help with job, and then it's like a wraparound service. Like they help you with everything, so that way you don't end up homeless. So I thought that was really cool. Syria had the #1 homeless rate in the whole world, which I mean, I guess that makes sense with seeing how war torn it's been over there. But that's the end of my presentation.
Awesome. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
So I just got a thrill. I just got to say I got like goosebumps, because I think you just gave me a huge shot of civic imagination. And maybe other people might have experienced it when you said you got surprised when you looked at Finland. And I could hear in your voice, you were remembering like, what the heck is going on in Finland? Like however you got to that website or that article or whatever it was that gave you that information, I kind of imagine you going, damn, what's up with that? And you conveyed that, I think, in your presentation, like, which is a beautiful thing, because it makes me think about, well, I know Finland, America is different. Obviously, there's many things different from our countries. Of course, it's a smaller country, blah, blah, blah. But the point is, they tackled this tough issue.
Yeah.
What's up with that?
And if we could like maybe adopt some of the principles that they had used, maybe we could combat it even better.
Yeah. So for me, that is a huge lesson for this whole exercise. And I'm tipping my hat to you, but I think everybody is giving me a same vibe. In other words, if it can be done here by this organization or in this particular place, why can't it be done in that place or in that space? You know, if it works for Baltimore or whatever, if it works for Finland, could it not work here? And to me, that is the start of a revolution. I think you're making my point here in our discussion of civic heart being connected to the civic brain and back and forth. And if you didn't know about Finland, then you couldn't have that insight. You wouldn't be able to have this kind of like aha moment. So the fact that you were able to do the research and find that example, you can see, I think, how it's like a pinball machine. You know, it starts lighting up all the bumpers on the civic pinball machine, at least for me, anyhow. Okay, thank you so much. Now we go to Ken Moran for your presentation. All right. Take it away. And then we'll start. Go ahead.
Okay. Well, my burning issue is psychological abuse in low-income communities. First off, what is psychological abuse? Psychological abuse, more commonly known as mental abuse, is the act of using verbal communication to influence or harm one's thoughts throughout day-to-day life. Next slide, please, Tom. Some common forms of psychological abuse are gaslighting, infantilization, the act of treating someone that is older as a child, and that can affect them mentally, and commonly more known as manipulation, trying to force someone into a position that they don't want to be in, or making them act a certain way that you feel as the superiority. Next slide, please. The effects of emotional abuse, mental abuse, psychological abuse is lowered self-worth and confidence, feeling of shame, guilt, and fear, hopelessness, distrust of others, inability to form healthy relationships, depression, and anxiety. Next slide, please. The stats overall is that nearly 48.4% of all women and 48.8% of all men in the United States have experienced psychological abuse, whether it be early childhood, midlife, or late life crises in nursing home due to poor conditions from health caregivers or just family members around. Then around 95% of abusers mentally abuse, harass their partners, and 4 in 10 women and 4 in 10 men have experienced a form of coercive control, henceforth manipulation. Abuse is also another way PTSD can form within a person's mentality, though I couldn't find an exact statistic, but it is commonly linked with one another. Next slide, please. Charities and foundations that are tackling the issue. Rose Books Foundation, which is locally operated organization focusing on combating domestic abuse for over 10 years. And their mission is to break the cycle of violence so that individuals and families can live free of abuse. Another being Synergy Services is a Missouri operated organization that is focused on providing safe places for abuse victims to find somewhere safe to relocate. They're associated with many services, being the Safe Place sign spread throughout the state, and street outreach, and a transitional housing program that they offer. And a U.S. operating resource focused on providing the country on information related to mental health, and providing news articles and tips and upcoming events is the MHA, Mental Health America. And my last slide being possible solutions to this issue is better communication within relationships, whether it's with family, friends, or a therapist. Practicing self-advocacy, educating yourself about abuse, and this in turn will give you insight to the situation. Set boundaries within your relationship. Knowing your limits can help set you apart towards those red flags, especially if your partner isn't respecting them. And that's pretty much my burning issue. Thank you for your time. And yeah.
Awesome. Thank you so much. Again, our issues range from the very deeply personal to the systematic, system-wide, and you can start to see, I think, connections between things that seem to be very personal and singular, but really are part of a very complex ecosystem. You know, when you're looking at the life of the community, then the life of a family, and then one person. So some interns are looking from the inside all the way up, and others looking at social problems from sort of a bigger view, going all the way down. It's very interesting to see some of the differences and similarities. Thank you so much. All right, let's take a look now. Moving on, Ashanafi, to you for your presentation. Go ahead. All right.
Before we start, I'm not a fan of public speaking, and in all honesty, I was apprehensive about the burning issue thing, but it's becoming uh more and more apparent why it's necessary. So let's get started. So uh that title is incomplete, but basically it's my burning issue is about the low property value that Black people as a community like the low property value that Black people as a community inherit, right? It's um I think that that's my burning issue in that coming coming from Africa where almost all property values kind of inherited at some point or stage in your life. Uh um Being in America having conversations, it's it really left a mark with me. So uh the prompt for this issue started with a conversation I had with the amount of land, like with the percentage of land owned by Black Americans as an entire population. And I hope to address why, I was curious, why are properties in Black communities collectively valued as lower than other ethnic communities, and how do we change this statistic to improve the general wealth in Black communities? Next slide. All right, so this chart kind of shows the home ownership rate according to race, if you can read it. More or less with Black and Hispanic Latino communities, we've generally been, as a general population, out of 100% of people, 40% were homeowners, or actually like own their homes, and they're not just renting, compared to 70% of white or non-Hispanic communities being homeowners and keeping that generational wealth going. And it doesn't go below 70%, right? If you're American Indian, Alaskan Native, it doesn't go below 60. So it's concerning how this trend goes, especially when you realize that at some point in recent history, we've gone from being on par with Hispanic and Latino communities to going even below average, which is just absurd to me. Because when I heard the statistic in the prior slide, I thought this can't be real. But funny enough, doing the research, it is. Good news is though, since COVID, there actually has been a slight increase um, since the pandemic, which is encouraging because there was a drop during the pandemic for Black home ownership rates. Next slide. So why is it an issue? And when I thought about this, I tried to come from the perspective of how do we influence change? How do we make it apparent that it is an issue? And ultimately, like like the major economic uh damage from a lack of home ownership is homelessness. When you're living paycheck to paycheck, every month you're paying rent, you're just one slip up away, one bad career day away from being homeless. And this chart kind of lists all the costs that are generated from homelessness. So when you have a greater population ending up on the streets, that's more and more economic strain. And ultimately, as a nation, these trends could be detrimental to the well-being of America as a whole. So that's my argument as to why it should be addressed as a major issue. Next slide, please. What makes property value increase, right? It's inflation, infrastructure, economic transformation, increased cash flow, and capital improvements. And I noticed that as a community, we don't really do much of promoting of that in our culture. A lot of what we do is, if anything, set towards the opposite. I find that in our general communities, we kind of have a habit of either tearing each other down or showing each other up in the most insignificant ways. And I think this is like these trends kind of show like following popular culture. It's these trends become more and more apparent. We try to keep up with the Joneses when our situation is entirely different. And um that kind of goes to one of my finishing points. So if we could move on to the next slide for time's sake. If you click on this link, uh, you'll have to right click and open the link because apparently I did not attach the link properly.
Yeah, and sadly, the way SlideShare works, embedded links are not live.
Oh, well,
So I can when I send out the summary email, I can put the link in there for you, and
uh,
then people can click on it. Can you just tell us what this reveals?
all right. So there's a real estate agent who's on a mission in Kansas City, right? Who is on a mission to create 1,000 Black homeowners. After being diagnosed with cancer, I think I'll try to share the link with people as well because I think it better addresses the subject matter. Is after having a diagnosis with cancer, she did some soul searching, and she was like, what would my legacy be? Just to be remembered as someone who liked to have a good time, or would I have made an impact? So her goal is to increase awareness and also to educate Black communities on how to gain that financial stability and freedom of owning property value, and emphasizing the importance of how that generational wealth rolls over and is more or less another insurance policy for your next of kin. Next slide. So there's a minority chamber project which acquired $4 million Chamber of Commerce project. It's a union between Black and Hispanic chambers of commerce. So a Chamber of Commerce is an association of business people who work together to promote and regulate their commercial and industrial interests in the community. A Chamber of Commerce can be local or international in scope. If I'm not mistaken, this chamber is local in scope to Kansas City. So they have that. It's a link showing how they had a joining, and I think that stood out, and I think that was important to this topic because in the prior chart, it was blacks and Hispanics who were on the lower end, the lower percentile of landowners in regard to the general population. So this, I think, is an encouraging development that needs more awareness. I think education is our greatest tool, and perhaps more publicity so that it can also start a trend in its own way. Next slide. Uh, so the Black Economic Union I found to be quite interesting because it's one of the oldest, like I think 13 oldest. It is the oldest of Kansas City's 13 community development corporations. It was founded by Jim Brown, Cleveland Browns football star, and Curtis McClinton, a former Kansas City Chiefs halfback. So they are uh, it's a link to their homepage, which states their mission and vision. And I think it's encouraging to know that this issue has been funded for a while. I think that's kind of why it's still relevant to this day. In that uh, they're trendsetters in creating mobile communities where Americans can be valued and provided options, interconnected within stable communities and assured high quality for life through excellence in education, homeownership, and business development and employment. So next slide. Thank you. So my proposed solution is just to promote positive community structures. So groups that act as mentors in healthy recreational activities. I don't really see that being promoted as much. Maybe I'm not in the right circles, but in the circles I've been in my life, I never really saw people like me taking on responsible roles. They more or less were doing their own thing, always too busy working. I think that when you instill that value in a younger generation, they have that self-confidence to grow and aspire to be something more rather than just kind of fall in line with whatever narrative is told about being Black is the point I was trying to make. And redefine the emphasis, like redefine like where we place our emphasis in our poor communities. And I wrote down Dubai as an example because Dubai is more or less a desert. It doesn't really have what would be called uh resource wealth, but it's one of the richest cities in the world. So I think it depends on how you redefine your community value, right? Where are you placing, like, where are you like, how are you trying to define your value? Because with antiques, some of these things, when you look at it compared to what we have in the market today, we call it junk or trash or irrelevant. And some people price these at in the thousands to millions, right? It's about where the value is, the history attached to it. What is it worth to the community? And I'd say stop talking about it and act. It's with community value. I mean, the real estate agent, right? Like that's been an issue that's been talked about for generations. I mean, since Black people got their freedom in the United States, it's been a major point of conversation, but there's not really much action that has changed that. So what action could be made to change that? What unions could be formed? Maybe local unions could be formed. Just if you live in a Black community, as Black homeowners, you come together. If you live in a rented community, what policies could be put in place where maybe if there is a rent increase, what state standards can be put in place towards home ownership, right? Where you could have scholarships. If the goal is to get more Black college graduates, what scholarships could be given towards home ownership for people who graduate? Like what benefits could be attributed to to incentivize people to purchase homes and to change and negate that trend. So that's my burning issue, and thank you for your time. And if you move on to the final slide, is just an honorable mention. Tanisha Williams, the CEO of Elite Realty Partners. She is not local to Kansas City. She is in Florida, but she has for someone pretty young, she has a pretty impressive track record with real estate sales and also training real estate real estate agents, black real estate agents. And I think that was an honorable mention I wanted to make while doing my research.
All right. Thank you so much. Home ownership. Why is it so low? That one slide is so striking. I've seen it many times. It's I mean, we could spend the whole class just looking at that one slide about the home ownership rates across the different racial groups in America. It's it really is shocking, and it can't stand. But yet, as you say, if we don't know the truth, several interns have said this already. If we don't know how we got here, then we can't know our way forward. So showing these powerful slides that are hard to look at sometimes is so critical to this work. So now we have this perspective over time about who can own a home in America, and that's the American dream, right? Or at least one of the American dreams is get your white picket fence. Everybody's home is their castle, and all that dialogue and all that aspirational talk, and yet that one slide blows that up. And it's quite challenging, I think. Very good stuff. Challenging, but really, really powerful. Okay. And then we have, last but not least, Brandon. Okay. The floor is yours now, sir. Take it away.
Hello. Thank you for your time, and everyone's slides was impressive. It's has put things in perspective. Thank you for your time. And my burning issue is stagnation within public education and the effects that it leads to. Next slide. The problem with current education is as time moves and education continues to stagnate, it will lead into dire issues for future generations and, fester more problems. Like the future generations will not be as prepared as for when they step out of school as they would be like back in the day when public school was like first started. It wasn't really built to continue on to these modern days as we're moving more into technology. It's a lot more industrial, if you will. More kids with a lot of potential for greatness get neglected, and as I said, we need that potential for when we get into these future generations where technology continues to advance and times change. A quote that stuck with me that honestly made me think about this entire situation is: school is more concerned with the student's score than the students themselves. Next slide. My research honestly brought to light even more than what I thought it was. About 76% of Missouri students attended class at least 90% of the time during 2020 and 2023 school year. The graduation rate of independent school districts was 93%, which is great. However, 50% of those people were actually ready for outside of school or to have a job. And I will say, I didn't put this in the slide, but the people who attend these school districts, like the amount was 4,000 plus, and that's really not a lot of people considering, the entirety, like global wide. Um, those who do not have high school, those who don't have a high school diploma struggle to find a job that even gets them by. Like working minimum wage nowadays is, with the education that you have, it's just not going to cut it. And research showed that the U.S. Census Bureau says that those who fail to finish high school earn approximately 10,000 less annually than high school graduates, and over 36,000 of those who actually have a degree that went to college and actually had more formal education. And that was geared more towards them. On top of all that, high school dropouts are 3 times more likely to be unemployed, which, as again, the school system's like, it is what it is. Next slide. Organizations actually helping to solve this issue: IC Stars, World Reader, and Heads Up. Next slide. IC Stars is more global, but like even then that they're reaching within like local communities and actually going out and targeting those with like lower wages that are most likely haven't really actually gone through like these education school systems that fail to actually provide and help them and prepare them for the future. And they're actually gearing them and making them ready for for life outside of schools, and like and actually having the education to actually tackle and get these jobs, and just to even help them live. And it's even being relevant towards the times as we shift more into technology. Next slide. Heads Up is a more of a global thing. They help actually get funds and spread awareness, making this issue more in the public view, where it's more seen, and they have a global reach. And as I'll say in the solutions slide, that is important. Next slide. World Reader is fighting for literacy among these people who are failing to be treated by the actual school systems that are in place. They go through primary school and reach out to the kids that are failing to actually complete the school system, because the school system is rigid and can't really accommodate for their issues. So they've actually taken a step to actually go ahead and try and tackle on that issue. Although they first started tackling more like African or people of colors, more in those situations, they've brought in, and it's become more of a wider thing. Next slide. My solution, if I had the power and position, I think what would best help tackle this issue is changing schools and how changing schools look and how they're formatted, because it's been the same since it first started. Like the general desks, how they're lined up, and and then the actual classes themselves, it's been the same. It hasn't really changed to again accommodate for future times. And as education needs to be branched more into what's relevant to actually help these kids and students prepare themselves for outside of school. And through my personal experience, Some of these teachers try to do that, but given how schools are actually regulated, it's hard to. And then when you go into the other classes that really just follow the same structure, it's jarring, and it took me out of the learning. And if it took me out of it, I'm sure it took out plenty of others. Another thing that would actually help is making the class blocks or class periods actually geared more towards the schools, kind of like how IC stars structures their cycle for the cycle attendees, the interns themselves. Yes, continue like teaching these core subjects, but the way you do it should be different for each class it is, because we're individuals. Our needs are different. I'm not saying cater to specific people, but for whatever your general class is, I believe it should be geared more towards them. So that way they have a better, they're more likely to be engaged, and more likely to pay attention, and more likely to actually learn from the classes that they're attending. If you were to ask me what I can do right now with the power that I have available to me, the best I can say is I can help spread awareness, like post stuff on social media, um, or just talk about it in general passing. That that's what I can do right now. That's within my scope, and that's the best that I can do. And that again, I don't think many people they think about it, but they never speak it out. So other people may think about it, and it's so that leads to a lack of awareness. And if we were more aware of these situations, I believe things would change. And that is my solution, and that is my slides for my burning issue. Thank you all for your time, and I hope you've gained something from this.
All right. Great way to end our presentations. Lots for me to think about. So let's take a 5-minute break and return. Let's see, it's 10:28. So we'll return at 10, let's say 10:35. Okay. Thank you all for your really well thought out presentations. I hope you learned from each other. I know I did. I'm always impressed by the commitment and research and passion that you do and you should display when we go deep into these issues. So a few themes emerged for me. One is the power of data. So I hope you appreciated the part of the assignment that caused you to go and find these slides and these charts. And that telling the story about the issues requires that kind of research to help people understand what it is that you are so angry about, why you think the issue is so important. When you show us those slides, it really brings it alive. And they say a picture's worth 1,000 words. Sometimes a data chart is worth 10,000 words. And the one that really stuck out for me was the home ownership chart. Again, it's just a bunch of lines on on a piece of paper, but it speaks so much to what's going on in America. Is super deep. And it's something that people don't really know about. And again, it's counter to this notion of the American dream. Yeah, the American dream is good for 70% of some people, right? But only for 40% of some other people. And what is going on with that 30% gap, which is getting worse. So when you bring slides like that into the picture, it helps on so many levels. It communicates a lot in a very fast way. It makes you want to ask why, right? It makes me want to go and get more data. It just is so powerful. Which means that we have to collect the data. So again, it's not something we address in the class, but think about it. How is that chart even able to be connected? Is because the U.S. government collects certain data and then makes it public. So this idea of doing research and having data out there available to activists like yourselves is kind of an unspoken need that if we stop collecting the data, it really will stop justice from moving forward. It will be so much harder to do this work if we just don't know nothing. If we couldn't say, well, how many black folk do own homes? I don't know. But no one's collecting that. You couldn't have that chart without us collecting data, and that is actually a very important point of America. We do collect a lot of data here. Another thing that came up was local versus national. What things can be done just in Kansas City, right? And then what things really need a bigger hand, like a state of Missouri needs to be involved, or the entire United States government needs to involve. And I think I saw quite a bit of that going back and forth. And the issue of homelessness, which came up several times, I think is one of those issues that you can only do so much in Kansas City without help from the federal government. I also saw the distinction between direct service and public policy advocacy. So many groups that you pointed out to are actually in the field doing something like today. Like you could go to a certain place and get a meal today. You could go to a certain place and get a place to sleep tonight. And that would help you for the day. But then what happens tomorrow? And I think part of what I'm trying to, you've discovered is, yes, we need the people doing the service, but without addressing the societal issues and the policies, we ain't never going to get anywhere. And now you didn't make that statement in so many words, but I'm making it for you. This is what I'm hearing from your presentations. You cannot give away enough food to solve hunger. It's not possible. So that puts your brain into that other mode of policy, of changing the law, of changing the circumstances. And I think all of you kind of got that back and forth vibe. I just wanted to lift that up. You also told me about, you need to know about the context. This is something you brought up when we discussed civic brain. How did we get here? Why is it that ... Why are our schools so sucky? It doesn't happen overnight. Why are children being neglected? I mean, if it's not like we're not smart enough, something is off. And by raising these issues, you make us want to know how we got here. So in the case of looking at public education, my brain starts to think about, well, what about what was my public education? I had a good one. So what was going on in New York City in the 60s that wasn't happening, is not happening to your satisfaction in Kansas City in the 2000s? So I want to go back in time and I want to think about that. I also got the power of connection and collaboration. You can't do anything by yourself. And I heard a lot of people about awareness. We need to be aware. We need to be together. We need to act. We need to be in collaboration. I heard this theme over and over again, this idea of collectivism. And I think that's another lesson of our work. We can't do anything by ourselves. And the thing that really set me back on my foot was this example of civic imagination. Basically, I said, hey, if Finland can really make a strong start on attacking homeless, why can't we do it in America? I mean, that's how a revolution gets started, my friends, by simply asking such a question like that and then explaining yourself. Well, what's going on in Finland? Why are they doing, what are they doing right? What are we doing wrong? And now you're on the path to making a revolution. Those are some of the things I came up with. What was landing for you all? What came from your presentations and what you heard from your colleagues? Let's jump right in.
I just want to echo your sentiment about presenting the data and how persuasive and compelling that could be.
Yeah, were you persuaded by anything in particular? Did something jump out to you, Greg?
The graph, there was some, I can't remember, it was some in Braxton's and in Maya's. They had some good charts that like the charts speak for you. It's like the charts speak better than anything you can say.
Okay. Actually, you gotta say something on that?
Um, I just wanted to say like a constant theme. I guess I'd recognize, and it is just that a lot of policies just don't get updated quick enough. Like some of these issues are just policy related, right? Like with the school issue, with the incarceration issue, it's their policies that were put in place that worked at the time, but as society changed, it became a barrier in which it's kind of causing stagnation now, and it's causing issues in the community rather than being a system that works to our benefit.
Mm-hmm. So, like I think someone mentioned the 3 strikes and you're out rule. So this is a policy from the Clinton administration, but it also is found in some schools that have strict disciplinary codes. You know, that it gets put into a school, like you break a rule once, twice, and three, and then you're expelled. And there's no looking at your case. It's just a rule. And if it ever made any sense, we're not sure, but it certainly doesn't make any sense now. So how do these policies get put in place and how do we change them is a huge question that that's basically my work. That's what I do. You know, as an organizer, an activist, you know, we attack bad policies and try to replace them with good ones. And I think you can see, you know, if you just picked any one of the issues that you guys surfaced and decided, okay, we at Icy Stars are going to organize to change, just to say, for example, how mental health is addressed in Kansas City. You can imagine that's like a 5-year campaign. You know, we're gonna have meetings, we're gonna draft an ordinance. And in Chicago, there's an example where a campaign was done in a community. They went door to door explaining the effect of mental illness in African American communities, the fact that there were no resources, and they persuaded the homeowners to tax themselves. So that the homeowners in, you know, a community of say maybe 20,000 people more or less they're paying like an extra $25 a year voluntarily, so that a mental health center would open up in the community, not far away, but right there. And then folk could go in there and get some of these counseling services, addiction services, literacy services, other things that were all mentioned in these presentations that fall under the heading of mental health, which several of you suggested are instrumental in homelessness. So if a person has bad mental health, it's going to affect their ability to be housed. So several people mentioned that. So imagine in a community that had gone through this whole process of organizing and house meetings, and I mean, it's not going to happen overnight. But at the end of the day, in Chicago, we have not 2 but 3 places just like that because there were 3 campaigns.
It is crazy that when Maya said like this situation with homelessness has been solved before and just hasn't been implemented anywhere else, that I was like, wow, that's really, why hasn't it, why at least take some aspects, like please.
Right. You're left with like you're hungry at the end of a meal. It's like, what is it? I don't get it. You made a great meal over there. Why can't we have a good meal over here? It has that feeling of like, I don't get it. And that's part of what gets us up out of our seats. Now that we know that it's possible somewhere else, you can't necessarily chump me and say we can't deal with it in America. I just won't buy that anymore. I know it's a complicated situation. It's not an easy situation to solve, but it's not unsolvable because they dealt with it in these other places. And that's actually kind of almost a liberating thing to know in a funny way. It's not a hopeless situation. It actually gives me some hope, actually. So it's an energy. I guess what I'm saying is it energizes me. It's energizing. Yes, it's makes me angry that we haven't had the courage and the resources to do what this other country did for whatever reason, but they did it. So I think that's fantastic. Okay. Well, I'd like to give you a few closing thoughts, and then I have a story to tell, and then finally I'd like to turn it over to Gustavo for our final words. So my friends and civic colleagues, thank you for joining me on this journey to civic engagement. We looked at the civic heart and the civic brain and the civic muscle. And so we collectively went through this exercise of solving a burning issue, and you were able to exercise all three of those muscles, if you will, all three of those domains by attending to this assignment. So here are a few closing thoughts. You know more than you think you know, but there's always more to learn. I advise you and urge you to to deepen your civic heart and expand your civic brain and exercise your civic muscles. And the way to do that is to get in action. I think we've heard that over and over again. Talk is cheap. Get up on your feet and make the path by walking it, which means you're more powerful than you realize. So don't tell me that you're just one person. I don't want to hear that. I think you're taught at IC Stars that one person touches 1,000. And I do believe that's very, very true. I ask you to be humble, to be kind, and to listen, learn, and then lead in that order. I ask you to pay it forwards and backwards. And I ask you to become part of the IC Stars community as you matriculate and graduate and leave IC Stars behind, and maybe you even leave Kansas City, but don't leave IC Stars. Become an alumni. I know you're going to get an email like the day you graduate asking you for a donation. Give what you can, my friends, even if it's $5. And hopefully you all land in good jobs and you'll be able to afford much more than that. But more than important, if you're able to be a mentor, if you're physically around KC, don't forget the office where it's at. Come back and help and be a helping hand and a mentor to the next class, cycle 5, cycle 10, whatever, right? You got helped. You were given a hand up. So you can be that person. Absolutely. I ask you to build something, make something, be in action. And there's this phrase I use, make the path by walking it. If this stuff was easy, it'd be done already. So don't be put off by how difficult or complicated this civic work is. You can handle it. I know you can. After you've tackled IC Stars, really, jumping in at the community level and helping build something, you're going to be able to do it. And people will be looking to you to do so. I ask you to be a connection, to be a connector, be a joiner. You know what I mean? Be a networker. The more stuff you can connect and join, the better to be in community with others. And I ask you to start now. Don't wait. All right. Final story, and then we give the floor to Gustavo. So this is a personal story, and it has to do with my love life, strangely enough. I used to be a theater producer and was constantly involved in producing theater, like 24 hours a day, living in the theater. I was the producer of a theater company. I didn't have any personal life and decided at the end of 1990 to try to get in a relationship with a person, maybe even get married, who knows? And I put an ad in a classified ad in a local newspaper here. It's called The Reader. So maybe you have a free newspaper in KC, right? And this was before the internet. So it was a physical ad, with 30 words, seeking woman, who likes to do this and drink champagne or whatever, whatever you can put in these little ads to try to sound funny and attractive. And I was answering the ads of women who were also seeking connections. And I came across an ad by a woman named Sandy. She was seeking companionship, also in relationships. And I remember calling her on the phone and having a conversation, that lasted maybe 5 minutes. And every other word out of my mouth was the arts. So I was a theater producer, I was in the arts, and I was doing the arts and the arts and arts. So I was kind of like running off on the mouth there. And she stopped me. She said, "Hold on, Tom. You sound like a nice guy, but you're not my type." Pretty blunt, right? I mean, we're on the phone. We're not looking at each other. I mean, you kind of want to be direct in these funny situations. But then the strangest thing happened. She said, "But wait a minute. I have a friend." And so this is what I'm going to do. I'm going to call my friend. I'm going to ask her to is it okay if I give you her phone number? How is that? And, and I said, like, honestly, I don't know you. I don't know your friend, but yeah, why not? Fine. And hung up. And for most of the world, that would have been the end of it. It really should have been. I mean, come on, this is a stranger I've talked to on the phone for maybe 5 minutes, 6 minutes. But here's what happened. Sandy called her best friend from work, whose name was Merle, and Sandy and Merle had been best friends for 7 years. In other words, they worked together, they traveled together, they had a lot of common interests. They were super smart ladies, very successful in business. They worked at the same company. And in all those 7 years, Sandy had never set up her friend with any of her friends. I don't know if that speaks to the low quality of their male companions or their high standards, maybe a little bit of both. But here's what happened. Sandy called up Merle and said, "Merle, I just had the funniest call. I have a strange feeling. I think you should talk to this guy, Tom." And as I learned the facts of this years later, I was stunned by this turn of events, because Merle should have said to Sandy, out of your freaking mind? Don't you dare give my phone number to some strange guy you met from a want ad who you talked to for 3 minutes and you never even met him. I'll shoot you if you give me. That should have been her response. But instead, she was kind of like what I call Zen. She had like a Zen mind. She said, "Whatever. Okay, fine." And because Sandy was like pressing it, she was like saying, "I have a funny feeling about this guy." That's the word she used. "I have a funny feeling." So she's selling me to her best friend. Could have gone really south. And Merle, because she just was in a good mood that night, instead of saying no, she said, "Fine." All right. So because of that strange set of circumstances, I got a phone call a little while later, and the phone rang, and it was a woman, and she said, "Hi, this is Sandy. Remember me?" I said, "Yes, I do." She said, "Well, listen, I called my friend as I said I would. Her name is Merle. Here's her phone number. She's in business, but she loves the arts. Have a good life." And she hung up. So I called Merle, and we made a date. This is all back in 1991, my friends. I'm getting teary-eyed because that first date changed my life. And 5 months later, I proposed. And a few months after that, we were married. And this is the result. There you see Sandy standing next to Merle, who's obviously in white, and me when I was younger, slimmer, and had hair. That's us. October 1991, Sandy was our maid of honor. So, yes, exactly. Okay, exactly. So, why tell this story to you? Well, why did Sandy do this? I mean, it was a small risk to her, I guess. I mean, it just took a few minutes of her time. I guess it was a risk in that if it didn't work out, maybe she could have lost her best friend over it. It's possible something like that could have happened. But it was an act of pure kindness. and generosity to a total stranger. Whatever I said, however I came across in that phone call, somehow connected with Sandy, and it made her say, I got to connect my best friend to this total stranger guy just talked to for 4 minutes. It's a mystery that can never be answered or solved. And I can never repay the debt to Sandy, even if I gave her my lung from our kidney cancer transplant. That wouldn't even begin to repay the debt that I owe to that lady. And so that act of kindness not only changed my life, but my friends, it changed the life of the entire city of Chicago, because my entire career as an activist would not have been possible without Merle's support and her love and her generosity towards me. So in a way, even my ability to teach you today and my experience at IC Stars could not have happened, if you think about it. And the hundreds of interns that I've interacted like I'm interacting with you now was all a consequence of that one act of generosity from Sandy to me and her friend. My friends, all I can say is I hope that you experience similar acts of breathless and breathtaking generosity. And I hope you will be able to give others the same without cause or reason. And you'll never know how that stone will ripple in that civic pond. And so if you do that, you will truly be experiencing and practicing your best possible civic heart and your human heart. And that's all I have for you, my friends. Back to you, Gustavo.
Man, that was so beautiful. That was so beautiful. I can't put it any better. I'm proud of the way you guys showed up. And I'm excited about all the different presentations. So good job. Good job to everybody, and thank you, Tom. I know we have a meeting that's starting right now. But this was great. I've enjoyed the different courses that we've had, cycle 1 and 2. And I know we'll be in touch to try to get you on board for 3. So thank you to everyone for your hard work.